Hello and welcome back to ZIM Explorer. I'm Dr. Abstract. And in this ZIM Explorer, we're going to take a look at ZIM from the viewpoint of an animator, say coming from Adobe Animate. Let's go take a look at the ZIM site now at zimjs.com. Alright, so ZIM is a JavaScript canvas framework, zimjs.com. We put up a little message here to Animate users and guiding them to this Animate page. For a while now, we have been extending Animate because ZIM is built on Create.js. Create.js is what Adobe Animate exports to, and so for the last 5-10 years, we have been helping Adobe animators have extra components and controls and conveniences that ZIM can provide. And that's exciting because Adobe Animate hadn't been, it wasn't really being updated with new features, and yet ZIM has constantly been updated with new features. So let me just take you through, just briefly through ZIM, and then take you through this Animate page right here, and show you what it is like to animate with code, because ZIM is not a timeline tool like most animators are used to. But we still can provide all sorts of support for different types of animations, so we'll show you that. So here are some feature demos, CSS style. Oh, there's the Animate one. That's one of the first banners we'll see in the other page there. Connectors, these are features that ZIM have. We have a bunch of components, and if you click any of these, it shows you the example in the editor. There's animating along paths. So in general, ZIM's a canvas framework that lets everyone from beginners, we teach kids how to code right up to professionals. And we specialize in designer code. We're trying to make this easy for designers, animators, artists to use as well. But it is completely code-based, or primarily code-based. There are a couple tools that we provide as well, such as the editor. There's a cheat sheet for all of the things that are available in ZIM. We have an editor. Here are what people make with ZIM on the canvas: generative art, games, e-learning apps. We have all sorts of UI, UX, interactive ads, data visualizations, interactive logos, puzzles, cards, infoactives, and you can well imagine that many of these involve animation. We are also in 3D, in Three.js, 2D interactivity on any 3D surface, so that's pretty cool. We can easily get into, or we can easily make mobile apps with the Zap mobile tool to make progressive web apps. And we are coming in at 63% less code than other frameworks. This is just a few examples here. If you press this, you'll get more. And even those are, say, 5 years old for the most part, showing that ZIM has less code than your average HTML, JavaScript, GSAP, GreenSock is a way of animating, tween animating in the HTML world. We have the equivalent here in ZIM on the canvas. And then other frameworks such as Pixie, Phaser, React, Vue, P5.js, etc. All of them are coming in at more code than ZIM. So that's pretty cool. That means it's easier, and hence people really like using ZIM. Okay, there's the kids. So if you want to learn ZIM like a kid, you can go there. If you want to learn it like high school, college, there's school as well. But up here at the top, I'm going to hit the top, is the Learn section. So if you want to know more about ZIM, it looks like this: new circle, .center, .drag, and you've got a draggable circle. We have an editor where you can test this out. All you need is a text editor, and, well, as a matter of fact, you could even use the online editor, but a text editor and a browser, and that's it. So that's good. The canvas itself was made for a very visual results. As mentioned, Adobe Animate can export to HTML5 canvas, so anything that Adobe makes like that, ZIM can actually make as well. It's the same system. We have videos. If you've never done JavaScript before, this is how you can learn how to code with JavaScript, to create using creative coding. So that's a large series that matches up with ZIM School, which is like a textbook for that. If you know JavaScript, there's the ZIM basics. So how do you people who come from JavaScript, how can they use ZIM? So that's the ZIM basics. We'll be going over a little bit of that in this Explore, like just as in how to get started. This is an Explore, so that's an Explore video, or this is an Explore video. This is the Explore section where we explore all sorts of things. Usually that's a little bit longer, an hour, hour and a half explorations. Some of them are quite complex, but some are easy as well. And then Code in 5 minutes, showing it's a video series showing what can be made in 5 minutes with ZIM, and there's maybe 50 of those. We do have ZIM working in Adobe Animate, and we have tutorials for that as well. So that's been traditionally what we've been when we've been talking to people from Adobe Animate or users of Adobe Animate. We're trying to get them to still use Animate, but then extend what they can do, because inside of Animate they can now ask for more types of components, and I'll show you some examples of that. Now that Animate is kind of being put away, sunset, so to speak, maybe some of you may be interested in seeing how to code animation. Okay, so creative coding is in a sense, our bread and butter, along with e-learning apps and things like that. So creative coding, we're making more visual things with code, and that's why we try to make ZIM as simple as possible, because we want visual artists, designers, animators, illustrators to be able to use ZIM as well. So that's a series called Creative Coding. We also teach kids how to do this as well. And, it's a good place to start too, even if you're not a kid. If we're explaining to kids, probably you'll be able to understand as well. And then school is the one level up. I teach interactive media. I'm a professor at Sheridan, so I teach ZIM at Sheridan as well. And there's all sorts of articles related to that, as well as sets of tutorials, and then tons of tutorials down here. Okay, so let's go back then to the home page. Anytime you can press the Z in the circle to get to the home page and find this Animate page. The Animate page is also listed under Code. There's a part of interactive animation. We can show you that after as well. That's using sprites. There's NFT, so we were making NFT arts. Here is the mobile apps, and there is ZIM Shim for Adobe Animate. So we've adjusted that page a little bit, and let's go in and see it. So that was our official way of getting there. This is the template that we'll get later. But back here, there's a direct link right here to that Animate page. Previously, the Animate page looked like this down here, where we had tutorials, and here are the tutorials. So how to just drag something with the template, and how you would do this is in Animate. You can still do this now that Animate's still alive, the time of this video anyway. So you can still do these tutorials and work with ZIM in Animate. That actually might be a good route for you to go initially, because if you're used to Animate, these things, then you're all inside of Animate making this stuff. So follow the instructions right here. I guess they're here. Okay, there's a zip file, and tutorial 1 is what you'll want to look at. And that will get ZIM, all of these things, working like scrambler puzzles and dragging little circles along noodles. Speaking of noodles, hey, there's me. Got noodles in my head there. There's sprite animation, texture packer sprite. So this sprite is broken into an even grid, and so you just say how many columns and how many rows, and then you can run the sprite animation. Whereas this sprite is packed in with texture packer, so 2 different types of sprites. We also do P5.js generative art type stuff with a generator. We're using noise and sound frequencies, animating to parallax. So many of these also relate to code-based animation, particle emitters, but just showing you there right in Animate. However, these all work without Animate. We're much more comfortable working in VS Code It makes it very simple, as I'm going to show you, and we don't need Animate. But if you still want to work in Animate, you can bring all these into Animate, and hey, that's great. All right, so that's where we were before, is showing you tutorials on how to bring ZIM into Animate. And now what I want to do is show you what it's like to animate without Adobe Animate. And those are here. So ZIM is a JavaScript canvas framework with many animation features. ZIM's built on Create.js, which is how Adobe Animate exports to the HTML5 canvas. See the ZIM shim. That brings you down to below how you can do all the traditional stuff. Animations in ZIM are made with code, not a timeline tool. So at this time, we don't have a timeline tool, although you can see the timeline visualizer is not a tool to build animations, but rather a timeline tool to show you what code animations look like. Okay, so between animations, let me show you. We could open up. Let's open up Animate. Okay, so F11 down out of here. I was going to show you the code first, but why don't we just do something in Animate as well? How do I run Animate? Animate. And we'll just remind you what a tween looks like in Animate. I'm sure you know. I'll remind myself, actually. Haven't done this in a little while. Just as a bit of history, I was the most avid Flash user when Flash was around. I worked on it from, well, when Flash first began. Flash, well, it was Flash 3, I think I got started, because I did Director before that. So I was an avid Director user. Then Flash kind of came along, and I went, okay, and moved over to Flash eventually. And then I stayed in Flash, unfortunately, a little bit long, or too long, perhaps. Let's see, we'll make a canvas one right there. Did I press that? Yeah, I did. And so I stayed in Flash perhaps too long, and I really wanted it to live because I was doing mobile apps with Air, and so I just love Flash. I taught Flash for years and wanted to stay there. So when the canvas came along, I said, no, let's do it in Flash, come on. And so for about 3 or 4 years after the canvas, maybe 3 years after the canvas came along, I was still going with Flash. And eventually I jumped ship in a sense. But by that time, canvas frameworks were already established. So ZIM is kind of like a little bit of a come behind. All the hoopla of the canvas was over when we created ZIM, which was built on Create.js. So Create.js got a lot of initial hoopla, being loaded billions of times, and then kind of became stable. And ZIM is built on that stable Create.js. It was stable in part because Adobe Animate needed to export to it. So if it ever changed too much, Adobe Animate would also have to change. And therefore, it's good to have a stable base. And that's what ZIM's built on. And we've been changing ZIM constantly since that time. So for the last 10, 12 years, we're now on version 20. And these are major versions. We've got hundreds, if not thousands, of minor versions with all sorts of exciting things. Anyway, I've left you looking at a blank Animate screen while I babble on, haven't I? So, timeline. Yes, a timeline. All right. Okay, haven't done this in a while. We would need an object to start with, wouldn't we? So why don't we just make a simple circle if we can? There we go. That's pretty big, I suppose. I'm going to turn this into a movie clip. Convert to symbol. Yeah, that's probably it. And we'll call this ball. Without the caps lock on. Ball. Movie clip, registration, point in the center, and hit OK. So there's our ball on the frame. And how do we do it now? Let's see. They did some changing. Well, I wasn't quite used to it. We got to sit over here and move the ball. Is that all we do? No, not quite. Oh, I think we do I add a frame? Right click, insert. Well, hang on just a sec. Let's put that ball back there. That's our first frame. So I'm going to insert a frame here. Convert frame by frame animation. Insert frame. Insert keyframe. That looks good. Yeah. Alrighty, and now we pick up the ball and move it to there. And do we have an animation? No. Okay. Classic. Create classic tween. Sounds good. All right. Now do we have animation? We do. Okay. So there we go. I think I probably could have done that slightly differently, but like I said, it's been a little while. So what we're doing here is we're looking at the properties. We have position. There it is. Position. That's the width and the height. Oh, X and Y, there it is. Okay, so there's our width and height, and here's our position, 140 and 200. Let's adjust that a little bit. We're on our first keyframe here to how about 200, and this one also at 200. Just, at 200. Some round numbers there. So we're at 200, 200, and we're going to this last one here. Let's go to that. How about, looks like roughly 400, and then we'll keep this at 200. So we've just done an animation. We can run this, and this will export to Create.js, and it will do that animation. Do we have to see that? Control Enter. Did I do it? And there it is. Yeah, and I see the animation. It looks like it's looping too. Okay. So there we go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make this, how big is our circle? If we had a size on that, we could make it exactly. But anyway, it's 137 in width and height, which is roughly, I don't know, 70 in radius or something like that. Okay, so we're going to remake this with code now. You ready? We could do it in the editor. Yeah, let me show you both ways. So here's ZIM. If we hit the editor like that, we would go new circle. And we set a radius of roughly 70. We have it black, but let's make it purple. Dot loc. And what was our first location? 200, 200. So we can drop this down. I'll try and keep the font kind of big for you. This is called chaining, what we're doing. And then .animate with an E. We want to animate the X to 400 in 1 second. There we go. We're done. I've got a bigger size screen. I think our screen and the other one was something like, I don't know, 500 by 500. So roughly the square version here. Okay, so you see that? Test, and there it is animating. So I just did the same thing that we did in Adobe Animate, and the nice thing is I get specific numbers that I can use here. I mean, we get specific numbers that we can use on the in Flash, or sorry, in Animate as well, in the panel on the right hand side, and basically all they have done is overlaid a GUI onto this, what you're seeing here. So they had this was around for ages, this is code, and then they put a GUI on it and said, isn't that nice? One thing, we don't have a GUI here, but we kind of do. We can say new grid, like that. And now you can see where things are. So that's that version. We also have this thing called .place, which is quite handy. So I'm not going to currently animate that, just so that we can try out place. And what place lets you do is pick it up and decide where you're going to place it. Then we look in the console right here. And you see how it tells me? Control ++. So there we are in the console, and it's telling me where I've just placed this object. So because we don't have a graphical user interface, this is one way that we can do it if we need to place visually. Usually we don't, because we can do things like the following. For instance, let's take this circle. I'll just close the console. But anyway, you would take those numbers and you would put them right here in the loc. Aside from loc, which locates the thing called the registration point, let me just show you what that is, .outline. So we don't have a GUI, but we've got things that sort of help us figure out what's happening. This is showing us the registration point is in the center of the circle, and that's the bounds of the circle. So when we loc, if we were just to loc at 0, 0, you will see that that goes up in the top left corner, like that. whereas a rectangle does not. So if we say rectangle and make it 100 by 100, so the rectangle is a little bit different in that the rectangle's registration point's at the top left corner. So there we go. So aside from place, we can easily position this thing around wherever we want. So I'm not going to outline. Instead of using loc, which locates the registration point, so if we did 100, 100, that would put it, oh, that's 1,000, 100, 100, and then also let's just show you that on the grid. So new grid. You see how that's at 100, 100? The registration point gets put at 100, 100. Okay. Instead of doing that, we can do the following. We can say dot pose. And pose positions things around the edges. So if we went 100, 100, it would look the same as before. But if we say to the right, then it's 100 from the right. And if we say from the bottom here, then it's 100 from the bottom. So do you see how we don't really need to actually put things anywhere? We can easily use these dimensions, or these the width, x and y's, to put it anywhere we want, including the center. So there it is. If we want it right on the bottom, so there's right on, oops, that's not right on the bottom center. Why not? 0 from the bottom, 100 from the center, sorry, 0 from the center. So now it's 0 from the center and 0 from the bottom. If we want the top, we want the top there. If we want it from the right, we put the right there. And that's top right, and here is right center. Okay, so we can place that around and add a little gap there, like 20 pixels. Okay, so we can easily move things, and then we can also animate them as you saw there. We can do all sorts of things with animation. Oh, that animated to an X of 400. I guess this thing must be, well, it's 500. This is 100, so we're 500 by 500 right now. And so we've just animated to a position, the registration point, to 400 here. But watch this. Let's center it. So another thing we can do is just dot center, and we can then animate. Let's try a different animation. How about the rotation to 360? And this is going to look funny. All right, there goes an animation of the rotation to 360. But that's because the registration point of this, recall, dot outline, is at the top left corner. So you see what's happening there? And same with scale. So if we did scale 2, it scales out from the top left corner. What we want is to center the registration point, and then it scales out from there, and same with rotation. Rotation 360. Okay. That's a registration point. You can also set the registration point by going .reg center. But then you would, what center reg does is it centers it and does the registration point. Let's see how we loop and rewind. Loop and rewind is a little bit further on. This one is the time. So if we want a time of 3 seconds, it will now spin slower. Let me just get rid of the outline there for you. So now it spins slower. That's the time. This next one is the ease, and we could do, quote, back in if we wanted to. Whoomp. And then we could also do back in, out, like that. And so that gets us our ease. Neat, huh? We could make it bounce off the ground, but let's try, instead of doing that ease, let's set it to linear, because we're going to prepare to actually loop this thing. But unfortunately, loop is another parameter way along the way. If you wanted to see that, you go to the docs here, type in animate, and here are your parameters. The properties we want to animate, the time, the ease, the callback. So what function to call when we're done. what parameters to send that. If we want to wait, weighted call, loop. And so then we get to loop. It's way down here. So we have a second way to get to parameters. And that is we put all of these in squiggly brackets like that. We can drop them down. And then we say props are those. So now we're using the names of these parameters right here. It's almost like CSS and the value. Actually, CSS is like what we're doing right now. This is the time. This is the ease. And then the last one here with commas. Don't forget your commas. The last one here is we're going to say loop, :true. All right, so that allows us, then the order doesn't matter. We could do them in any order, so we can get to any of them. We could do a sequence, or we could, whatever we're wanting to get to. There's a from, so we can animate from a certain point. All right, and so now we've done that. Here we are testing, and now our animation is looping. Okay, let's increase its speed a little bit. All right, we could also loop a certain number of times, and you can start nesting things as well. So if we store this in a variable, const rect is equal to, we could then add, we could say new circle. Let's make this a bit smaller. How about 20? We can leave it black, and we can pose it. Let's comment out this loop for a second so we can think about this. So there it is, pose at 0, 0, that's where it is, but we're going to pose it inside the rectangle. So let's pose it at 20, 20 on the left top side of our rect. Remember, here's rect. So this is rect is also a container, and we can put that in there. And now there it is there. Oh, how about 10 and 10? And let's make it also white. And we'll give it a bit smaller. So now we have a little white dot up there. And because it's inside the rectangle, when we animate the rectangle, that little white dot goes along with it. And so that's like a container, a movie. We do have movie clips, but we generally don't use them. So you can actually try, if you want, to make movie clips, but we just don't need them. I've built thousands of things. So if you go out to ZIM here and look at examples, look at all these things that we've made, and we're not. Isn't that cool? And we're not using movie clips. We just don't need them. They're just hundreds, thousands of things here. Blah 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 blah. We're animating all over the place all the time, and I have never once used a movie clip. So it just don't need it anymore. sorry to say it. The only reason we have movie clips is so we can support Animate exports that show the movie clip that has the timeline like that. But we do have a timeline. There's a thing called a ticker, so we could have animated this with a ticker, and that's basically what the Animate is doing. We've just made this easier for people rather than having to do manual animation. We can do it ourselves. Let's slow that down a bit so that I can think of it. All right, so there is, and we could animate the little circle inside there. So dot animate, oops, I forgot the A, animate, like that, and we can animate the scale of that to 2. And there, just animate it. If we wanted to rewind that, oh yeah, do you want to see a rewind too? So I'm going to drop it down so I can get the props here. I'm going to do the same thing that we did before. It's a little, unfortunately, like ZIM is very flat usually. We don't have a lot of nested brackets, unlike other frameworks like Angular, Vue, React. But in this case, we are slightly nested in that these brackets have all of the things we want to animate. So color to red, well, pink. How about pink? Okay, so we're animating the scale to 2 and the color to pink. We better move this in just a little bit so we can have some room. Those are the properties that we're animating. And then here is rewind, :true. And now it gets bigger, turns pink, goes to white. And all of that is animating in a rectangle. So cool, huh? With this technique, we can do more complicated animations too. For instance, let's go back to our feature. Let's go back to our front page here and into Animate. We were just looking at this. If we click this in the editor, here's what that does. It fades in the color, and then here we are doing a sequence animation of some of a tile, and you can view the code to see how we did that. And it's the same kind of things. We're doing a couple different animations there. There's the simple animation of the color, okay, where we animated to a color in 2 seconds. Then we made a tile, and we're doing a sequence animation on the tile. We're also calling, when it's done, we're animating the rotation. One line, target.animate rotation 360. Did that. And if we have a view, once the animation is done, then we rotate it. And it's looping, and there you go. But it just did. There you go. Neat, huh? So that was that example. I was talking about more complex. Oops, sorry about that. Closed it. Note, I guess, that each of these is opening up in the same window. I'm also going to show you in this Explore, in this ZIM Explore. Ooh. I'm going to show you the sprite animation as well. That's how we animate with more things that look like pictures. Okay. There's also animations along paths and emitters, but I was trying to get to, I think, this example right here, where we're animating Beziers. This happens to be an NFT. We can open it up, I think, in full somehow. Is there a little, yeah, there it is. Okay. So you see what we're doing? We've got little animations in the eyes, and the mouth is reading off this message from down below here. If you press on it, the whole thing kind of clears so that it's just the image, and does a little bit of a bounce animation, boingada boingada. But up here, if we press that, it shows the Bezier curves that we have in here. So ZIM's got blobs and squiggles that allow us to do shape animations. This isn't really a shape animation, kind of is. We're actually just animating the Bezier curves, the rotation of the Bezier curves to loop and give us this look. We also have this thing called wiggle, which allows us to not animate exactly the same each time, but basically wiggle. So there's an example of wiggling right here under the fireflies. We've got some fireflies here. This is out on CodePen. And these fireflies are animating their opacity, so alpha, we call that alpha, animating the alpha, but they're also wiggling about. So that's nice. You can't really do that very easily on a timeline. We are just wiggling, and wiggle's pretty easy to use. You can see it here in the code. There it is, wiggle. We're wiggling the X. This is where it's going to start, and if we don't put anything, it just starts from where it is. Here's how much the minimum X, the maximum X, the minimum time, and the maximum time. All right, and that allows us to wiggle each of these things individually there like that. All right, so we can do complex animations as well. We've got animation. We do have shape tweens. I'll just show you that. So that's animating from one blob to a different blob. Our blobs and squiggles look kind of like this. So that this is the Bezier curves. And note that you can double click on them and change the type. So this one allows, sorry, that heart is getting in the way, isn't it? But anyway, that's that one. Here's one that bends. So now it bends like that. Very similar to your drawing tools. And we double click again, and it goes away completely and makes a point. And then we double click and it becomes equal. So that's called a mirror right there. So that's mirror. If we double click again, it's back to straight, where it's not quite a mirror. Each one works individually, but is straight. That's how our blobs and squiggles work. And if we hit reset, it just animated back to what it was. Okay, so we can animate, this is a blob when it has a shape, and that's a squiggle when it is a line. And we can use the path tool to make those paths. We introduced that back in ZIM Neo. So do we have Neo on here? There's beads, wiggle, scroll, parallax, scroller, bead, shape. No, it doesn't look like it. Oh, maybe Neo's up here. So here's paths. There's Neo. So animating along a path, we introduced in ZIM 9, which is here. And if you press that, then this is the ZIM Neo Mini site. We probably should link right into the Neo Mini site. So here's animating along a path. There she goes. And this is a user editable path. So we've just edited that path and we're still animating along the path. Nobody else is doing that. Not even Paper.js, which came from Illustrator. The people who made Illustrator made a framework called Paper, and they can't do this. They don't let the end user adjust the Bezier points. So that's pretty cool, huh? Anyway, that was some examples. There's all sorts of other things that we can do related to that as well. Oops, forgot. Maybe I should open those up in new windows. Huh? This was the example. All of these main ones here will show up in the editor. So when we press that, we go to the ZIM editor. And when they're in the editor, it's along the same lines, but there we are dragging this object along the path as well. When we do that, you can get the code, and the code is nicely commented that talks about what we're doing. All right, and you can copy the code over onto this side. What do? We just animate a rectangle. I don't really want to overwrite that, but you can hit that and copy the code locally and change the code locally. All right, and then do a test, and it would be your test. Or show whatever you've just copied over. All right, I'm in the editor, and we've got these things called zaps, and when I do a search, do a search for animate, then there are the results for animate. These are all examples with animate, but there's also animation. So if I just take off the T, there's 36 results. So I just did that, and I hit copy. And when I hit copy, it allows me to make a list. And so I made a list. Here are my lists. I have advanced things, art, and there's my animation list. So I made that list for you and prepared an expo. So if I hit expo right there, there's the expo. And if I launch the expo page, here's all those animation examples in what's called an expo. And you just press any one of those and it will go to the animation example. By the way, that's Rive that I'm looking at right here. Rive is a competitor to Animate, Adobe Animate. It's sort of the latest, hottest thing. I don't really like it, but whatever. I like Animate better. It's got this thing called a state machine that is so bloody complicated. I've been animating for years, and I go there and I can't figure out what the heck they're wanting to do there. It seems to be powerful, so people like it. But anyway, we have supported Rive. So now Rive works in ZIM. Here's an example of Rive. That's a Rive animation right there, and it's working in ZIM. There's other examples too of Rive in ZIM. I'm not sure where they are. But, well, actually I do know where they are with respect to that. Where did we go? Double editor here. Here, ZIM, Rive. So these are all the new things. I pressed just right here, up on here, or what's new in ZIM, and these are all the latest versions of ZIM. Rive was, here we are doing perspective, so we've got perspective going, and that's a ZIM animation there, and you can see that it's now working in perspective. So that'll be handy for you if you need to do perspective, which is pretty cool. All right, anyway, back in 018 was bringing in gesture controls. So we're using gesture controls there. And 017 is Rive. So here's a bunch of Rive examples right here. So this is following the cursor. That was animated in Rive, and we're passing in data to the Rive, or this is a Rive button, and we just turned off the fact that it follows the cursor. That's a Rive animation, and we're showing that we can dynamically set the width with ZIM of that Rive animation. And then this was animating to sound. Actually, doesn't seem to be animating to sound. I think it's because I've got conflicting sound with what I'm recording here as well. But anyway, that's Rive stuff. We were taking a look though at the zaps, and I just wanted to show you that back here on the ZIM site in Animate, down at the very end one is that expo. So all of the ones from animation is there. Plus, I realized that sprites, we also have sprites, and that they didn't have the word animate in it necessarily. So I did a search on sprites and added that to the list as well. So this is the complete list currently of what we've got in the editor, which isn't everything that we have, but you know, there's 500 or 600 files in there, including animating with a scroller on the background. So that's called a scroller right there. And we're adjusting the speed, and this thing's just popping up. Oh, and there we have a little television. Nice. Oh, da-da-da-da-da-da. So you've seen this kind of animation. That's the scroller with time, with sort of parallax going on. And there you go. So only we need to make this animate. We got the whole scrolling background thing going. And some of that can be seen back up here in our sprite animation. So why don't we go to look at sprites now? We've spent a bit of time, 40 minutes, looking at custom and peeking around and stuff, or sorry, what was that called? Tweening. Okay, this is tweening, like you did on the timeline there. Here's a little mini site called Interactive Animation, which now is showing a sprite. So we had paid one of our Sheridan animators to animate Dr. Abstract. That's me, and that's the result right there. And this is called a sprite sheet. Here's another example with one of his, and I'll press that, where we're using the mouse to control the speed of our sprite walking around. So nice, along with parallax. And thank you, Antonio, for the nice stuff. And there's a shoot. So all this was done without the timeline. The sprite itself was probably made in some sort of tool, like I don't know. It could have been done in Flash. I think it was, or Animate. I think it was probably more like. I don't know what our animators use. If they use, I know our 3D modelers use things like Maya and stuff like that. But I'm not sure. Okay, but anyway, it was made outside and then exported as a sprite sheet. So that's what's missing. If Adobe Animate goes, then what tool are you using to make sprite sheets? But I think there's a bunch of them, Toon Boon, and I'm not sure. But anyway, the sprite sheets get made, and then ZIM can operate on those very easily. So I can show you how we do that. These are a bunch of videos that will help you do that. Here are basically some instructions to get. Here's a link to a free version of Texture Packer. I have a paid version of Texture Packer that will pack the sprites in if you need to. So all the information about making and using sprites, how to easily get the sprite there, is probably already in here. But why don't we try together back in our editor? So now I'm going to bring a sprite in. Why don't we, I can just do it right up here. The sprite, you have to have a sprite, and we do. So we're going to use zap_assets, like that. Let's make this a bit bigger for you. I don't usually code right in the editor. I usually code outside the editor, but may as well do it here. Zap assets is equal to, and we say what assets we need. We need space guy.png. That's the sprite sheet. We can go look at that in a second. And we also need some data because it's packed in there. Space guy.json with JSON JavaScript object notation. And those are located in the zap_path of zimjs.org/assets. So we have a bunch of assets that are available here. Here they are. And here's a bunch of various AI assets and backgrounds and stuff. But if you don't like AI, then we have other ones too. The assets were primarily for kids. There's a little sprite that is an ant. So I think we've got a monkey. Is there an explosion in here? No, because we're in nature. There's a butterfly. So here's a butterfly. That's called a sprite sheet. It's actually got different animation sets, so turning left, turning right, and just animating center. So this sprite sheet is in a grid. I think it's a grid based, so that all the columns are equal, all the rows are equal. It's not packed in there like a texture pack or grid. We're looking at Space Guy right here, which is packed in there and made so that the GPU will use it. The powers of 2, I guess, is the size of it. So there they are all packed in there, and this is the nearest power of 2. But anyway, you need data to find out the width, and because this one is a different width and height as these other ones. Okay, so that's slightly different. And here's the data. The data is at the JSON file there, and that's what the data looks like. But Texture Packer made that. Okay, so we have sprites in here that you can find. Most of this was ZIM based for kids as well. There's an explosion that we run quite a lot. Anyway, so where were we? There's the stuff, and that's where they're located at the assets. And now on the left-hand side, let's just clear that. On the left-hand side, we want to, we're going to run it on the left-hand side in just a sec. Here we go, new sprite. Like that, we say the fact that we want JSON. So this is a JSON version. JSON is equal to, or no, colon. Sorry, this thing right here. There's the JSON. And we center it on, we're not going to center it on the screen. We'll pose it on the screen, I guess. 10 from the, we should put it at the bottom, shouldn't we? This guy's walking. So 10, how about, which I don't know which way he's walking, I think to the right. We'll put it in the center at the bottom. 0, center at the bottom. And then that gets a dot there. And then we will dot run it. There it is. Just ran once, unless we say loop :true. And there is our sprite walking along there. All right, not that hard. As a matter of fact, much easier. It's like 60% the size of the code for Phaser, which is a game engine, because we do stuff as easy as possible. And it's neat here too. We can, if we wanted to loop :true, rewind :true, watch this. It goes forward, and then it walks backwards. It goes forward, and it walks backwards. So we're using the same thing that we're using with the easing, with the, when we animate here, we use the same kind of commands that allow us to then run our sprite in different ways. So if you wanted the time :2, the default is 1. Now it's walking more slowly. And if we don't want to rewind, you'll see that just continues to walk slowly. Or fast, 0.5. Now it's running. And we throw that into what's called a dynamo, which is a dynamic sprite. And dynamic sprite allows us to change the speed of the sprite with code at any time we want. We can throw that into an accelerator along with our background. I think we have a background example back here. When you press this, it actually is in that system. So right here, we have a background that's in a scroller, and we put the scroller and the dynamo into an accelerator. And we use a motion controller to control which way that accelerator and the speed of the accelerator. And so that's amazing. You end up with an animated scene that could be controlled with a joystick or controlled with the mouse or a key press. We've got examples of all those. And there's the code right here. And once again, we've got an accelerator that holds both the scroller and the dynamo. And this is the motion controller that is operating on the accelerator based on the mouse movement on an axis that's horizontal. There's our speed, and here's our minimum and a maximum speed, which sort of match where your mouse is. So that's it right there. We may have had the sprite. There's the sprite. You already saw that. Okay, that's the background. We even made the tile. And you've got something that's approaching a game already. Nice, huh? All right, so where are we then? Looks like I had a couple copies of that around. And then I could save this. So I go File, and I give it a name and save it. And we could have added this example to our other thing there. That guy's beaming along too quickly for me. Where was it? There. Slow. Well, I'll keep it at the default of 1. All right. Wow, a sprite guy with some sort of floating orb. Maybe it would look better with a color here. F.color. Oh yeah, that reminds me. Equals black. Or how about interstellar? Or red, or whatever it may be. So that's red. Here is interstellar. Interstellar. How do you spell interstellar? Interstellar. Does it only have 1 L? Nope. Ah, I just got it here. Interstellar. I was heading for 2 L's. Yeah, so I got it right. Just had a little typo there. I wanted to show you what it's like to code not in the editor. So this is fine, and you can actually share this with other people and et cetera, which is nice. But when we make professional apps, we're usually working, this is Animate, we're usually working in an editor. So this is VS Code. It is free. It takes 2 minutes to download. I have the template built in here, but so I just hit template, and that gets me my template. But if you don't have your template built in, then you can go out to ZIM and hit code right here. So this is a ZIM site, code. There's the template, and hit copy. That gives you the ZIM template right here. And we can say, welcome Animate. All right, and I save that up, and I right click, and I say either open in live server or open in default browser. And when I do, this is what we've got. So this is now just locally on my computer. I've stored it in a code directory inside of an animate directory, and it's called animation.html. So that's this file right here, animation.html. Okay, I'm working in a text document. I could go find that, double click it, and it would open up in a browser here locally like that. And there is ZIM with a draggable circle right here. Then we can take any of that other stuff. So where's our editor? That was that. We can take this stuff from our editor, which is here. And let's see, this stuff needs to go up top. We're loading in. Oh, I'll copy it all, and then I'll show you once we get there. So I copy this stuff right here, and we put it in the editor. The editor builds the frame for us. So this is the ZIM frame right here, and we're using the fit mode. There's our dimensions, there's our colors, and we call the ready function when we're ready. So that bit right there and the importing of ZIM is built into the editor. So the only thing that we need to do is this stuff. Normally, when we have here, we put our assets right in here like that. So you can grab your assets, and there, the next parameter right in there. And the path is this path right here, goes right in there as well. Another way to do it, though, is just recently we've made it so these work in both places. We can just cut these as long as we put them above the frame, because the frame needs to load these things in. So we can just leave it like that, and it will work. The frame.color of interstellar, we may as well put it here. That's where the color goes. Okay, and we right click and say open with live server or open in server. We already had it in a server, and there it is right there. It's a little bit different because our dimensions are different. So if we wanted to change that, I think we had the square is 500 by 500. Now we've got 500 by 500, and we refresh here, and that's what we had in our previous one. One thing to note is when you're using local assets, you've got to load your browser in a certain way. It's a canvas thing, otherwise you get a permissions error. But if you are in VS Code, an easy solution to that is right here, open in live server. And if you open it in a live server, then it won't do that for you. So here we are. I don't know why my live server's taking a little bit of time here. Yeah, there's it's called a CORS permission, and so there it is in live server. Now, any a CORS error, it's called, if you try and, this is the file system right here, and they don't want the average person loading canvas on that have images, because that can lead to viruses, I guess, and stuff like that. But we as developers know that we're looking at our own stuff, and so we have a special flag in our Chrome, like if I want to load up with Chrome, and we discuss all that. If you want to see it, that's here. ZIM under the tips, so the gold bar, there's ZIM tips right here, and you can either look at images or sound, both have that situation. Security error. So you just go on a PC in Chrome, right where you have your little shortcut, you add this flag to allow access. Right, well, it goes to here. There's a space there, and then nice flag, huh? Allow file access from files. And then you start that Chrome from the shortcut, and you don't have that problem. Anyway, blah bitty blah bitty blah. Sorry about that. That's all Canvas frameworks. It's not just ZIM. The live server, though, is pretty cool. So as mentioned, here's live server. Watch what happens with live server. If I change this to pink like that and hit save, live server is already uploaded. So that's kind of a neat thing as well. All right. So that's how we develop. We develop here in an HTML page, and we just put our code right here. There's the ZIM being called in, and we can do whatever we want in here. That is similar to what we are doing in the editor. All right, and then we publish that on our website. To make mobile apps from it, you can go to, well, here's the ZIM site here. There's the Animate thing. Do we show you how to get to the mobile? Shader animation. I guess not. I thought we did somewhere. Oh, that was just in a... somebody out on the Adobe site was asking if ZIM makes EXEs. And we said that we don't make EXEs, but we can publish as PWAs, which can be run as web apps or mobile apps. And that's where I put the link. But if you want to find that, it would be under the code here. It's right there, the PWA tool right here. And this is the tool itself, right? Okay, let me just go find the mobile thing. Resources. No, that's resources, tools, ZIM store, ZIM mobile right there. Okay, so normally I lead people to zimjs.com/mobile, which is right here. And here's all the things that ZIM does for mobile. It's got these things built in already, including multi-touch, etc. And there are these things called PWAs that various large companies are using PWAs. And we have the tool that made, for instance, these types of games in there. All right, and what the tool does is it says, please add to home screen. And you do that, and then it works as an app. So it's just like an app. It's got an icon on your desktop. And it includes all these things if you wanted to do it manually. It can work offline. So that can work offline. It's you don't have to load from the web anymore, so it's faster once it's there on your mobile device. So anyway, that's what we've got with respect to that. All right, we're approaching an hour. I forgot to tell you that you could go get a cookie. If you want to go get a cookie, since I've got you here, may as well look through a few other things, and I might be able to offer some advice. You're always welcome to pause and go get a cookie. All right, play the pause music. Oh yeah, go get a cookie. Yeah. All right. Anyway, sprites we've looked at, animate we've looked at. I think we looked at dragging along a path. Yeah, you can see the code for that. That's pretty easy. Particle emitters. We didn't really look at particle emitters. So we've got a couple different ways to see that. One is the mini site. So you can click this thing and see this example with these streaming particles. Here's the particles mini site that has the sort of streaming particle effect on each of our different things that we're doing. And so that would be fire, and we're changing the color of the fire. Snowflakes. So these are snowflakes we made, and they are animating around what's called a sink. So there's a little circle that is moving. We've set it invisible, and it's almost like a gravity well. So it's not my cursor, I don't think. But you could have made it the cursor. So I can make it the cursor following. We've got examples of that. Maybe it is. No, I think it's just a random animated circle. So the snowflakes look like it's being hit by the wind, huh? We have fireworks, which look like that. And there's sort of, that's two different emitters. One emitter to send up the code and the other emitter to do the fireworks. And then we have line animations like that, which are, again, going to another sink, and so they're sort of coming back. All right, that's the mini site when we made, well, this is the also going to a sink. So those are animations with emitters, and we do a lot of work with emitters that, did I lose it again? I think I got to open those up in a new window. Generally, if we're linking to ZIM from ZIM, we don't open up in a new window, but it's sort of annoying. I keep on closing the window and forgetting that this was the window that we were in. Emitters are often used for reward. There's just tons of examples of emitters being used for rewards. Let's see, this is not one of those. This is an emitter that is doing that sort of particle effect like that. But I suppose if we go zaps and do a search on emitter, we can probably find some beautiful particle emitter, motion controller, snowflake with emitter, emitter changing emitter paths, texture actives with emitters. I don't know. I don't think those are actually, we don't even usually say that we're using an emitter when we're doing a reward. So why don't we just quickly make an emitter, I suppose. So in here, when we press on this box, we're going to make an emitter go. So here's what an emitter looks like. New emitter. Sorry, just a sec. New emitter. Dot center. There's a particle emitter for you. If we want to only do it when we click on the box, we can start paused, :true, and now it won't go. And if we want to click on that box, which was called rect, we could put a tap on the rect, or we could say rect.on, mouse down, call this arrow function. So that's raw JavaScript, a little arrow function, and we can say emitter.spurt. So const emitter is equal to that emitter, and down here we say emitter.spurt. Sorry if that's small for you on your screen. And we say how many times, how about 20? So now when we mouse down on there, it does a little spurt. And that emitter is very customizable. We might want a cursor on that, .cur. And now our little rectangle, oh wait, we put the cur on the on the emitter. We want the cur on our rectangle, so just in here. And now the rectangle has, I can see that I can press that. Okay, the cursor. We could give it crosshair if we wanted. Crosshair, crosshair, I think it's singular. And now it has a crosshair. Whoa. Anyway, what was I saying though? Oh yeah, I just go back here. No, I can't go back because I've made some saves. Okay, never mind then. We go find our ZIM again. Back to here. What was I looking for? Who knows? Oh yeah, the emitter tool. Right. So did I show the emitter tool here? Or did I forget to do that? I think I mentioned it up in here. There's the emitter. There's the emitter configurator. So here's the emitter configurator that shows we could do lots of them like that. Right, we could do a min and a max though, so sometimes it'll be less, sometimes it'll be more. Can't really tell because there's so many. Then we have the lifetime of things. We have the force. So there's increasing the force. And basically you would play around with that. If you wanted lots of force, I could go code, and then I could copy the code, and that's my emitter. But we can also emit with, and by the way, all this was made in ZIM, these panels and stuff. We could also emit other things. So there is squares, triangles, here stars, but there's smoke and flakes and that. And you can start making this look like real fire if we don't make it go everywhere, but sync our angle. So now my angle, I want it to kind of go up. Do I want it up with more force? Maybe min and max force sort of thing. Look, I'm getting flames already. Oh, this also goes to wherever you press at the moment. So there's flames going up, and that's pretty close to realistic looking flames. Do we want to slow it down a little bit? And we could add wind. There's decay time, trace. Okay, all sorts of different options that you can do in amongst here, and that's, like I said, the emitter. Okay, the emitter configurator. And now I remember I just go back. So we were scanning through here. That was the emitter, stuff on the emitter. There's the timeline, and this might be disappointing to you because you probably think that it's a timeline tool. But GreenSock has, and so does Easel, which is what ZIM's animation is based on, CreateJS. CreateJS has an Easel module, and that handles basic animation that you've been seeing as you export from Animate. ZIM's Animate function or method is probably 4 times more powerful than CreateJS's, or not Easel, TweenJS. Okay, so Easel is their canvas thing. TweenJS is their tween. And we've got GreenSock. GreenSock's a competitor on the DOM, so it animates HTML tags. Actually, ZIM can animate HTML tags too, but why would we want to? We are on par with GreenSock. We even have more things. They might have a couple more things than we have. We've got a couple more things than they have. But we are both very, very powerful. And ZIM has an advantage in that it can be chained, so we can chain on Animate, which is nice. So that's us chaining our Animate on there. The one that came with CreateJS, TweenJS, is not chainable. It works the other way around. It's got chainable parts to it. But we brought all those parts in as parameters. And because we have the duo technique, that makes our parameters very powerful. So we can access any parameters that we want. Anyway, the timeline is matching sort of. There's a timeline that's available in GreenSock that shows what the animation is doing. And here is our scrubbing of that. We can also add trails, which we had on that by default, but we can turn the trails off and change speed of things. And anyway, so the animation tool is just a little widget here that lets you scrub an animation for educational purposes, perhaps. Okay, it's not a building tool. You've seen, though, that we do have a couple tools. We saw those tools back here on the ZIM site under examples. This is a tool that we've made. That's a slicing tool right here that allows us to slice, move things. That's the tool. This is different types. So we have done some mini tools along the way. There's an easing tool too. Do you see one that says easing? That was all part of ZimCat. Let me show you that. We should probably put the easing one on. Let's do ease. Custom ease tool, so it was down in Magical. So here's another one that somewhat relates to animations in that it's showing different eases and allowing you to change the form of those eases and see. So I mean, maybe one day we get to a timeline tool that is for editing and setting that. You know, we'll see. We're trying to keep this all basically in code based. There was the emitter configurator. Other ones are things like this threshold tool, which is allowing you to set the threshold, and this is another tool there. And save. Those are shaders. So shaders, where is this taking us to? Shaders are another way that you can do animations. For instance, here's an animated blob that's a shader. You can do some pretty... So you can take any shader animations and bring them into ZIM and operate on them. Okay, so that's what that was all about, is the shader animations there. And if we go back to our Animate site, what else do we have? Pens. So you can animate pens. This is actually just using a pen, and the pens are very beautiful. Here's the size of the pen. And we added this was an example where we were showing pull. If we don't show the pull, then this is the pen working there. You can double click them to delete them. You can move them around. And we have a large tool that is built on that. But we can animate pens as well, which is really exciting. So if we go back to ZIM, under examples, one of those examples is called GenPen. Do you see it anywhere? GenPen. There it is right there. It's a generative art tool. And there is, for instance, a kite tail. But under the pens here, we can do different things. Let's go to just a line, and we'll change colors of lines. So now the line will have two different colors. And what we can do is animate, say, the scale. So we'll animate the size. And as we draw with this now, it's animating the, the size of our tool there. And there we have a set of layers that we can put this in. So again, this is examples of how we're operating. We can move layers up and down. If this is the current layer here, we can move that up and put something underneath it. So we have other things like we can clear things, we can delete things, we can do undos, redos, colors, paths. Oh yeah, and animating along a path, sorry. So there's a path, and if we take that path, we can move the path here, roop, 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 and then say follow, and that will actually follow the path that we just made. So we got tools like that, and animating pens, which have made some very beautiful things. If you want to see what those things are, then you can go back to the main ZIM site and take a look at generative art right here. Oh, there's the generator. So this is animating with like P5.js animates. We're slowing down the animation on purpose because this stuff can be stamped and we can see it right away if we want to. But we sort of like the idea of animating here. We're stopping and starting it as we go. Okay, so a variety of animation type effects with the ZIM generator to make these types of things. But we were looking at art. This is animating noise. It's very beautiful, and we like it because we've got the controls for this as well are here. So, you know, what's going on here? Refresh. Let's try this again. Coming in. My dials aren't working. We'll have to look at that. It looks like there's a glitch with the heart. Should be over on the right-hand side. So I'm not sure why. Oh, there, that's going. And what about this one? This one is now too. So I don't know what that glitch was. But here we are animating how rigid or how bumpy those things are. So that's very bumpy. And this is, let's slow down the speed. This is the speed right there. So that's very smooth and very bumpy. And we're bringing that in. We're animating that thing down, bringing this up and showing different colors. This is kind of neat because you can scrub. It's like going backwards and forwards in time. Whoop, 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 whoop. Isn't that neat? So that was that one. There's another kind of similar example with noise. There's animating with shaders. Here's all various art pieces done for the for FX hash. This one is on Tezos, like a different sort of one here. Zinkel's animated stuff. Here's what we made with ZIM pen by animating the pen as we're dragging. Isn't that nice? I love that. And this is more animation of noise out here on, so we've got a couple dials where we're increasing the bumpiness or the smoothness of that. We can cycle through the colors or make them change, just stay the same. Okay, so when we have art, we also, we're left here in the editors again. How do we keep on doing that? That is making art with various animations and stuff, and the animated things. There was Rive, shaders, generator we looked at briefly. Physics also is another way that we can move things about with physics. And you can have a bunch of falling balls. So there's physics examples, noise examples. We've got beads. Beads have animations on them as well. So beads are, oh, that's loud. How do I turn it down? I don't know. I didn't provide a sound thing. Oh, there we go. Anyway, those were planets animating around a blob and following the path on a blob, much like these are little triangles that are on the blob, and then we're animating their rotation. Here we have a bunch of circles there, and if I think if I, do I have to hold that? Yeah. If I hold, or I can shift click them, I guess is faster. Shift click, and that deletes all these things. And we can get a more simple version here where we've got two, it's almost like a slinky. Anyway, those are circles all the way along a path, and then we're just changing that path, and that stuff can be animated as well. So there we are animating beads in along a path. Here we are animating clouds along a cloud path, and again that's interactive so that you can change that as it's going. And we also figured out at this time how to find out the bounds of a blob or a squiggle, and so that's us demonstrating that we now have live bounds on a blob and squiggle, which is exciting. So that's beads. The motion controller we mentioned is here. So here's examples. That's an animated sprite. And note, it's going left. And when I go right, that animated sprite goes to the right. But when I stop, it just kind of will toggle both ways and just sort of flap around there. We also have it going more slowly at the back. So because it's going farther, it's smaller, and it's going more slowly. That's built into ZIM Animate. Remember how we said we had more things than GreenSock? Those are some of them right there. We can animate the speed based on the height. We could also animate its alpha, so how transparent it is. So that means things in the background fade out. That's all built in during ZIM Neo. And we can actually animate anything based on any other property. So we can animate based on animation. That's called extra. Here's key down. So now I'm using the key down to kind of move this thing around. So this is the motion controller. We have mouse down. So now it's not moving until I mouse down. And then it presses. And note our subtle parallax is being animated in the background. We can also do game stick or game button. And that's with the motion controller. There. Parallax. So here's a parallax site, scroll parallax, where we're scrolling and we're animating things based on, this is mouse parallax right here, but we've also got it mixed in with scroll parallax. So I hit top and you see the scroll bar at the right is moving. People love those scrolling sites. We've been doing scrolling sites in Flash, as you may recall, for ages, and then HTML got a hold of it as well. So that's parallax animations, Bézier's, we talked about wiggle, we talked about, here's another example of scroll animation, where that guy in there, this is within ZIM though, not even HTML, so that's a ZIM window right there that we're scrolling, and we're animating the size of the circle as well as the, the walking speed of that sprite in there. This is called the scroller. So we have seen a couple scrollers, but scrollers basically animate a scene. And here we're animating two scenes across one another to get kind of a nice artistic effect. I often will project this onto bands or at events, raves and stuff like that. If I need a quick way to make a video for a song, I'll take the album cover or album covers and cross it over and apply blend modes and do something like this and get away with that. Yay. There's beads, so we're animating these little sprites along there, and remember that this is user editable, so now we have little ants being animated along user editable Can we go in a loop? There, those little ants go in a little loop-the-loop. Probably could have made it a nicer loop-the-loop. Okay. Do you like? Are you starting to see the power of ZIM just from all of these interactive animations? I know that it's different than timeline animations. There we're using wiggle. Wiggle is moving up and down. I think we're using wiggle. I can't remember where. Or a percent complete. I think this one was demonstrating a percent complete for you. We're just animating those, not wiggling. But we have percent completes, which mean that instead of if we didn't have the percent complete in there, they'd all start at the beginning. I'm not sure what that'll look like if I take it out. See, they all started at the beginning, and here they all come together. We might have randomized the speed on them, but there's the whole batch of them. But we don't want that. We want them starting at a random percent complete. So we're saying, hey, that animation, start at a random across 100. So 0 to 100, that will give us. And now when I run this, they all started at random spots. I think we got a rewind going in there. So some are already rewound and going. Isn't that cool? Okay, so that stuff is hard to do if you just got a timeline. That's why you would also want to be able to have some code going on there. And there we are doing it. That was the shape tween example, and then this is the expo. Once again, the expo is filled with various examples of animation. I didn't really curate it, I just did it on a search, but in general, in glancing at this, it looks like it's caught a variety of different types of things. All right. So there you go. I am Dr. Abstract. We put this little note in here about Animate that leads you in there, but you can also take a look at it through any of these banners as to what we're doing. If you go to generative art, for instance, if you're kind of interested in the art side, there are the examples, yes, but also there's a more section, and the more section talks about the fact that we can loop, and that gives us access to like lots of things quickly. We can animate over time, so time is usually used in animation. So we've got a ticker class, and here's all the things that relate to the ticker as well as the docs. We can make our own shapes and graphics and stuff, so anything that Animate can make in its graphical editor, we can make. Oh, I should show you something I forgot. We do have an editor. It was introduced back in ZIM Neo. Let's see what's the easiest way to get there. I suppose under the code, under libraries, it used to be right in here, Pizzazz. So it's part of Pizzazz. There is an easy way to get to it. It's called Path, but we called it Pizzazz 4. Which is right here. So it's just zimjs.com/paths. There's other ways to get to it too. And that allows us to make a blob and squiggle using this kind of stuff right here, and then hit the code, and it gets you the code that you would put into a blob. So if I copy this, copy, and go back to our editor. Anyway, generator, shaders, NFTs, pens, shapes, so shape tweens and shapes, tiling. We've got excellent tiling stuff. We can animate emitters, noise. So you see what I mean? This was under the more section up top here in the Gen Art. So make sure to see the more section. Same if you're interested in making games. Maybe you make animate things for games. Same deal. You go to games, you hit the more, and you've got all of that stuff as well there. But what did we do? We copied the blob thing. So I'm showing you how to use this, and then you can make your own shapes, just like in the Adobe Animate editor. You can make your own shapes, and then you can use those shapes as a blob or a squiggle. So let's go. We copied that there. We'll go back to ZIM and hit the editor. Got that stuff. Why don't we do it right up top here? I suppose we would say a new, well, I'll copy the path. Const path is equal to, and I've just pasted whatever we copied there. And then I can go new blob like that, and I can pass in the path. The colors first. I can't remember where the path is. The color, then the radius. But anyway, if it goes squiggle like this, and just, oh, points, I think it is. Points is the parameter, and then we say path. And we can pose that 0 from the center, 30 from the top, so center and top. All right, and there's our blob that we had. It's got a color, but if we say, if we just give it a border color of red, then and give it no fill, now it has no fill. So that becomes a path that then you can use for whatever you want, shape tweens or animating along the paths or what have you. Okay, that was a blob. There's also a squiggle. This will probably work with the squiggle too. And there's the squiggle. The only difference is that squiggle didn't end. So the blob would have gone from here and done a little thing back to there, but the squiggle is a line as opposed to the blob. But they basically work the same way. And you, not a blob. You can animate these things too. So if you animate them, then they start doing stuff like that, or you could animate them up and down. So you get animated blobs and squiggles much like that. We've done a set of those in the examples. F blob. Let's see what we get. That's that. 11. Winter scene with blobs. Blobs as a mask, so you can use those as a mask as well. Puppet blob, so you can change blobs or squiggles based on other blobs and squiggles. That's kind of a neat effect. Here's an animated blob. Let's open that up in a new tab here. Okay, so that's animating kind of all over the place. It's fine. But you can get more sort of structured ones. That's taking an SVG and putting it into a blob. Dancing aliens, blobatar. Oh, there's a dancing blob right there. So this is what I was thinking of. So that's, there's the path. So what we're doing is animating the rotation of that. It looks like that's it. All we're doing is animating the rotation of that point, and we're getting this kind of effect. Oh, here's a sync, so that will then sync the rotations. And you get an effect like that. Oh, I unsynced it. There is syncing the rotations. Okay, good. And dancing aliens, what is that doing? What does that look like? Oh, aren't they cute? So I'm making it dance. Boom, 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 boom. Make it look to the right. Make it look to the left. Make it say no. No. Make it say yes. Yes. Give it some freestyle dance. Although that didn't look like it danced very freestyle there. Oh, what's wrong with their free link? Oh, this guy free link's broken. Oh, glitch, glitch, glitch. All right. Anyway, made a while back. So, oh, free. I get it. Free is it's headed towards the mouse like that. So you can control it left and rights and up and downs a little bit. Looks like up and down and left and right. Got it. Not a glitch. Moire patterns. Oh, I mean, there's just so much fun. Yeah. Those are all on CodePen, so you get to see all of the code that's involved with that as well. All right, I think I'm needing to get to lunch. Thank you for hanging out here. If you're still here, you're welcome to join us in the forum. As a matter of fact, that would be a very good idea. Right up here. Join us in the forum right now. Sign in. Come on in. Say hi. Say, hey, I want to animate with ZIM. Can you show me more? Help me out. I'd be happy to help you. All right, as would anybody else in our forum. We're also on Discord, but most of our stuff happens here in the forum. I am Dr. Abstract. Have a great day or night. This has been a ZIM Explore. Really hope to hear from you. And really sad as well that Animate is being sunset. Hopefully the tool will still be around though. Okay, cheers.